Hey everyone, welcome back to InfoGamer. My name's Nathan, and Mark and I have decided that we are going to put out daily journal entries. Now with these journal entries, they're going to be short videos where we teach a principle that we've recently learned in our studies. This could be a principle dealing with game development programs such as Unity or game development principles. So this is my first journal entry, and I've decided to talk about action events. Now we've used action events before in our Doodle Jump game, and I know how they work, but I want to lay out a foundation, a framework for how to use action events so that you guys can take this script and make it your own and implement it into your own games. So with action events, you need two types of code. One code will be sending a message, and another code will be receiving that message. So here in Unity, I've created two scripts. One called action from, which will be sending the message, and one called action to, which will be receiving the message. Now these scripts and the codes inside these scripts that I'll show you, you can implement into your other scripts, such as like your game controller or character controllers and so on, and have them work with those scripts. They don't have to be their own separate script. I've just made them separate so that I can show you how they work. So let's go ahead and open them in Visual Studios. Now that we have it open in Visual Studios, you can see that I've already gone through and created this code. So I'm going to take you step by step through this code and show you how it works and how you can use it. So in our action from script, which is the code that will be sending the message, there's one important line that you need to add at the top of your script, and that is using systems. This makes it so that we can access action events, and more specifically, the action data type for our variable. Once you have that, it's time to create our action variable. And so in our class, we write static public action, then in angle brackets, you write the type of message that you want to send. So it could be an integer, it could be a boolean, it could be a string, it could even be a game object, and so on. But it'll be easiest for you to understand how this works if we use a string, because a message and a string, they kind of go hand in hand. So I've added string inside our angle brackets. Then you want to give it a name, and so I've called it my action. Once you've created this variable, it's time to add code that will broadcast the message. So this can be done in any function that will be run through, whether it's a function that's called in your update, or whether it's through an onTrigger or an onCollision function. But because we don't have any objects that are going to be colliding in this example, we've added our message trigger into our update function. But you don't want to put it in your update function alone, otherwise it will be sending a message every frame. And you don't need to do that because you already have an update function. And so this is more specifically for instances where you want to send one message to a multiple different objects at specific time. And so I've added conditions around our broadcast code that will only execute when we've pressed certain keys on the keyboard. So here I have in our update function, if input.getKey KeyCode.space. So if the player presses down on the spacebar, then we execute this code. We also have another condition where if the player presses the A key, then we execute this code. And these two codes are relatively the same. The only difference is the message or the value of the message that we will be sending. So to send a message, you write if, and then you check to see whether your action is set to null or not set to null. If it's not set to null, then you want to broadcast a message because that means you have a message to send. And so the actual code that will send the message is when you write the variable name and then inside parentheses you put the value of the message. So because we have a string value or a string type for our action, we're sending a string value in this action. If you had an integer, you could put a number value, or you could put an integer variable. If you had a game object, you could put a game object variable here, and it would send that game object. So in this code, we are saying we are broadcasting hello world, and in this code, we're broadcasting goodbye world. Once you've written all your broadcast statements, it's time to move on to your code that will be receiving this message. So let's go to our action 2 script. Now this code can be implemented in any code or any script that you want to receive this message. So you could have 2 or 3 different scripts that are all receiving this message at the same time. And the first thing that you need to do is you need to have this script subscribe to that message that will be sent. So you can go ahead and delete your start and update functions unless you're using those functions for other reasons. But you need to have an onEnable function and an onDisable function. And these both need to be spelled just like this. On the onEnable function, we will be subscribing or listening for that message. So to do this, we write action from, which is our script that's sending the message. Then we put a period, and then the name of the variable, the action variable. Then we have plus equals, and then we need to create a new function. And it's easy to understand the connection if you use the same name. So I've named this function here my action. You can name it different or something different, but I like to keep it the same name as the variable. Once you've done that, it's time to unsubscribe to this message. To do that, you use the same line of code, but put it in your onDisable function. Then change the plus to a minus. Once you've done that, you need to then create this function. So I type void myAction, then inside parentheses we need to add the parameter for the message that will be sent. So the value that's being broadcast from our other script will be sent to this variable. So it needs to match the same data type. So because our action is of type string, this data type needs to be a string. Then I like to call it what was sent. Then inside this function, we need to check for the different conditions that are being sent. So the first condition, we were sending hello world. So we say if what was sent is equal to hello world, then we execute the code that we want. Else, if what was sent is equal to goodbye world, then we execute different code. And so here, inside these if statements, you can add any code that you want to be executed. It could be a score system where you're adding score or adding points to a score. It could be application.loadLevel, or it could be a game over screen. The possibilities are endless. You could even cause damage to a character. Say you have one character that's sending, or one player that's sending a message to another player, and it causes damage, like a poison damage, to every character that is listening to this message. So in our example, we are just debugging messages to the console. So we have debug.log, the world says hello back. Or in case the message says goodbye world, we're debugging no to the console. Once you have that, we can go ahead and save it all and go to Unity and see how it works. So to make sure that these codes are going to be implemented in Unity, you need to make sure that you have game objects with these scripts attached. So I have one game object that just has our action from script attached, and then another game object, that has our action to script attached. Once you have that, we can go ahead and hit play. And if I were to hit the space bar, our message is debugged to the console. It says, the world says hello back. Then if I were to push the A key, we have our other message displayed. It says, no! Now to show you that multiple objects can receive the same message, let's create a new game object called action 2 action 2 and we're going to attach the action 2 script to this new game object. Now when I hit play, if I press the space key, you'll see that our message is displayed just as it was before, but the only difference is that this message was displayed twice rather than once. I'll do it again, but with the A key. Once again, our message is displayed as it was, but the only difference is that because we have two objects now listening to the message, two debug.log statements were executed. That's why there's a 2 here rather than 1. Now that's everything that we have on a basic framework for using action events. I personally really enjoy using action events. I use them in most of my games. They come in handy and they can be implemented in many different ways. And remember, there's endless possibilities in which you can implement this script. So be creative, use this script, change the variable names and change the different codes that are executed, and even try putting the send message, the code from, let's show you. So if we go to our action from script, this script right here with the action variable and the using systems is really all you need to send a message. So try putting this code, changing it from your update function to an onTrigger function or an onCollision function. Try implementing it in there and see how it works. See if you can get two objects to collide and then have it send a message to a different object. Now I hope you enjoyed this video and I hope you learned something new. If you have any questions, leave them in the comments below. Make sure that you like and subscribe and share with your friends, because it's always better to have friends.